So the All Blacks have finished their 2-match series up against the English, and now the next challenge is just around the corner. The All Blacks taking on Fiji in the USA, so quite a long distance to travel for one more match, but after that, the side heading to the Rugby Championship. And in this video, myself as well as Rugbyitch, we are going to be trying to predict what the All Blacks will go with in their starting lineup and reserves for this exciting contest. But Tim, first of all, the All Blacks 2-0 up against the English. They'll be happy about it. Do you see a lot of changes coming for Razor's side here?
I do. I think this is one of those tests where we're going to see a lot of changes. I think, against Fiji in the USA, I think this is a perfect opportunity for him to kind of switch a few things up just before the Rugby Championship starts and kind of get to see a few more players and kind of how they kind of just kind of do within this game, and also just give him a bit of more indication of who's kind of in the swing of things to go into the Rugby Championship. So, yeah.
Well, we will jump straight into it. We have got the front row. Last week it was Ethan de Groot, Cody Taylor, Tyrell Lomax. Have you got any of those three in your starting side up against the Fijians?
I don't. Ooh. I've gone with a completely different front row. I've gone with the likes of Tamati Williams as a number 1. I've then gone with Asafo Moore as number 2. And then Paseo Tosi at the number 3. So I've given him a debut in this game. So it's a big call because I know I'm starting him when really the idea would maybe put him off the bench to kind of come on. But I want to see it happen. And again, he's very familiar with Asafo Moore as well. Of course, both Hurricanes. So I also want to see Tamati Williams and Tosi. And I think that's an idea which Razor may actually try out. So that's another reason why I wanted to see that combination as well. So yeah, that's my front row.
Well, for myself, number 1, this is where I've actually gone with Ofa Tuangafasi. Now, he has had 2 games off the bench so far for the All Blacks, so he's had a few minutes, but I would like to see him get some starting minutes. Definitely if, for the Rugby Championship, we have got games pretty much back-to-back throughout that competition. Yeah. They're going to also want to make sure that he is able to take on that starting jersey. So I feel like this is one of those games that Razor may consider giving Tuangafasi a bit of a start. Plus, we cannot underestimate what this Fijian side is capable of. I feel like that is one thing that some people may have been talking about throughout the week, saying this should be an easy game for the All Blacks. But the Fijians, when they feel like they're in with a shot of winning a contest, they are extremely hard to beat. They were close with England in that Rugby World Cup quarterfinal. They beat England last year, the Fijians in England. So there is certainly plenty of potential for this Fijian side. And number 2, where they will most likely go with the Tavita Ikanaviri or someone along those lines, I have gone with Asafo Moore, the bulldozer for the Hurricanes. He is a phenomenal player. Cody Taylor, I feel like he had a couple good games up against the English, maybe not as impactful as most people were expecting. The lineouts are definitely a question mark for the All Blacks, though, heading into this Rugby Championship. Yes. So let's see whether or not Asafo Moore can get it a little bit closer. Paseo Tosi, I have also given him the start at number 3. It makes sense to put him in that starting side, even though for the Hurricanes he was more of an impact player coming off the bench, although during Tyrell Lomax's injury, we did actually see him get a lot more starting minutes. But that takes us on now to the locking duo. Now, there was the news that Patrick Tuipulotu has not travelled to the USA with the side. Instead, Sam Derry does make his way into the squad. So for myself, I haven't put Sam Derry in my starting lineup. Instead, I have gone Scott Barrett, the captain, at number 4, and number 5, Tupavai. I feel like that is a pretty safe combination. Even if Tuipulotu was available for this match, I would have still had him coming off the bench, and I believe Razor would have done the same, as the last thing that they want is to lose that man to injury before the Rugby Championship.
Yeah, no, I agree. If Tuipulotu was available, I would also put him off the bench for this one. But of course, he has not been selected in this case, and I have gone with the exact same 2 as you in terms of those locks, with Scott Barrett at number 4 and Tupavai at the number 5. So yeah, it's a good combination, very good combination. So we'll see if it can do better, I guess, in terms of lineups, like you said, in this game against the Fijians.
And it does seem like Tupavai in both of the games has had a pretty decent impact coming off the bench. In fact, a majority of the All Blacks bench does seem to have really changed up games. You just got to look at that last one up against England, with a certain Barrett having quite the impact throughout that fixture. But we are now moving on to that loose forward trio, and I believe these are the 3 hardest positions to decide on throughout the starting lineup. Now, you might not agree, because you may have found it pretty easy, but for me, I had no idea who to go with in this loose forward trio. In the end, I decided on number 6, Ethan Blackadder, number 7, Luke Jacobson, and number 8, a debut for Wallace Satiti. Now, I hesitantly took Ardie Savia out of that starting side. I did consider putting Satiti off the bench, but I also think you want a little bit of that versatility when it comes to a man coming off the bench, definitely if you only have your one loose forward.
Yeah.
So I went with Wallace Satiti, throwing him in the deep end alongside Jacobson, who he did play a majority of the Super Rugby Pacific second half of the season anyway with in that loose forward trio, which is also why I did put Jacobson as the 7 rather than the 6, and then Ethan Blackadder as that number 6 as well.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. We had a very similar line of thinking, by the way, in this. I have also gone with Ethan Blackadder, number 6. Again, I just think I want to see him get a few minutes on the board here, because, of course, we've seen somebody in Finale play most of the minutes within that number 6 jersey, and I just think he can add something different in this, so I want to see what he can do. And then with number 7, I have gone with Sevilla there. I have made the bold call of keeping him. I've kept him in. I just think that, yes, we've had this whole argument about, like, is he an 8 or a 7? But I think in this scenario, I want to see, Wallace T2, who I have chosen for number 8, to be in that number 8 spot, and that's what he's there to do. The reason why I chose him is that he's literally a specialist in that position of number 8. So I have to choose him there, and then for Sevilla, I have gone with the number 7. I was also considering Luke Jacobson there, but yeah, I think just got to go with Ardie. So that's my loose forward trio there.
So I have a question for you, Tim.
Okay.
Let's just say into this game, they play extremely well. Ardie Savia at 7 has an absolute blinder. Wallace Satiti does extremely well in that number 8 jersey. As the coaches, do you then make that transition, Savia to 7 for the Rugby Championship, or do you just play it by ear and determine what is needed next? Because if you're going to throw him in the 7 jersey here, does that mean you're willing to do it during the championship games too?
If they did do that, then I would be a bit aggrieved or a bit upset if that was the strategy they wanted to go with, because hypothetically, if Satiti was at an awesome game along with Sevilla, then fair enough, go into it with the Rugby Championship. But you could also make the argument, if they do that, then there may be a better player who wasn't selected that could fit in that role. So it's one of those where I don't know if that's the strategy which they want to go into.
Thing again, is it?
I don't know. I'm not mentioning a name, but it's one of those where that's the way you could go if that's what you want to do. But I think for this strategy, they're going to consider him more. They consider Sevilla as number 8, but I just think for this individual game, I want to see Satiti play. So, and I think that's what Razor wants as well. So, for that reason, that's the kind of loose forward trio, which I think.
Righty, so we've got quite a few changes in that forward pack compared to what they did have in the last game. In fact, I think our only similarities to last contest would be Scott Barrett in that number 4 jersey, and then, of course, for you, Savia, making that transition to number 7. Now we move on to the back line. For myself, I'm continuing the trend of Chiefs players. I've gone with number 9, Cortez Ratama, and then number 10, I am sticking with Damian McKenzie. I felt like Ratama had a very strong debut up against the English. Soon as he came onto the field alongside a couple of those other members of the bench, the game seemed to speed up for the ABs. They looked like they were a lot more attacking minded, I guess you could say. Yeah. And that combination of McKenzie and Barrett was actually working very nicely when those two were the first and second receiver. Yep. McKenzie, no matter what happens, he's still going to get a lot of stick for how he plays. It's the smile at the post. I'm telling you right now, Tim, that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Whether they like him or you enjoy it. As a Blues fan, right, when they go head to head and he smiles and kicks one over, does that grind your gears a little bit, or does it go off your back?
It's a part of McKenzie's game. That's the great thing about it. Like it's like you have certain things which you associate with a player. That's like the one thing no other rugby player has. It's McKenzie. It's the smile which he has. So it's one of those where it just makes it yes, I can understand how it could get irritating, but at the same point, it's part of his game. It's part of his strategy. It's just it's good.
Maybe you could do the smile after the kick goes over. Maybe that's something to incorporate. Exactly. Into this game.
He's walking back. He goes with a little smile. He does the finger gab, but just the smiles.
Yeah, the camera will still be on him. He'll still have one of them that he'll be able to look at. But for yourself, Tim, I assume you have gone pretty similar in these two jerseys.
Indeed. Yeah, I've also gone with Ratama and McKenzie. I think these two, like you said, they have. I think both of them were great in that game. Yes, I can understand there may be a bit of criticism, I guess, towards Mackenzie, but that's really because of how well Bowden, just his performance, I think, off the bench. But really, I think both of them really work well together. We've seen a lot throughout Super Preseason, of course, for the Chiefs, and yeah, I think they'll have no problem within this game against the Fijians. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you that I think this is what Razor will also think of as well.
And I guess it does have that little bit of cohesion as well from Super Rugby Pacific.
Yeah.
Might be something that the coaches do look at, which takes us on to the centre pairing. Now, there is the option of cohesion in these two jerseys, 12 and 13.
Yes.
Have you got cohesion here, or have you got
a
little bit of a mix? Okay.
I haven't. I've gone with a mix and a half for sure, because I've taken the two out in Barrett and Redgo, and I've put in Anton Brown and Billy Proctor. So that's the and again, just to clarify, Anton Brown is the 12, Billy Proctor is the 13. So that's the combination I've gone with, and I think it's one which I think would work well. I know the only negative, I guess, behind it is that Anton Brown has been, of course, playing more as a 13 for the Chiefs throughout the regular season for them. I mean, throughout the whole season for them. But it's more just he's seen as the cover in that 12. It's something which you can't really yes, if you wanted to, you could put Billy Proctor there, but he's better in a 13, I believe, than Anton Brown. So it's one of those where you ought to make a compromise in that sense. And I think those two would actually work well together, because Anton Brown is more of the defensive-minded player, whereas Billy Proctor is more of the attacking-minded. So I think there's a bit of balance in that as well. So yeah, I'd like to see it happen.
I would too. I feel like it would be definitely a new look for the All Blacks, even though, of course, Anton Lienert-Brown has got quite a bit of experience for them. Normally it is either coming off the bench or as the 13. Like you mentioned, he does get quite a few minutes there, it would seem. But for myself, I've gone with number 12, Jordie Barrett. Number 13, Anton Lienert-Brown. I've put him as the outside centre for this game. I don't know why, but for some reason, I just feel like the coaches will be looking at that combination, because for me, the obvious combo, if you were going to keep Jordie Barrett in, would be to have Billy Proctor at 13 to have that Hurricanes chemistry. But then I feel like they've had 2 games in a row where Anton Lienert-Brown has come off the bench, hasn't really had a huge amount of minutes, and if you have got an out-of-form Rieko Ioane, perhaps that is the time to get Anton Lienert-Brown into the starting side to see how he does partner with Jordie Barrett as we get closer to the Rugby Championship. So that's the kind of way I think they may look at it. Now, I might be looking at it the completely wrong way, often am, which is what I hear about in the comments, but I think that this is a combination that could work, and hopefully we do get to see an opportunity, at least in some form, for Billy Proctor in this matchup. But now we move on to the back 3. For myself, I have gone number 11, Caleb Clark. 2 games in a row Mark Talia has played, so it would make sense if Clark is 100% fit for him to be in the starting side here. Talia, don't get me wrong, the man can attack extremely well. Defense, I don't know what's happening at the moment for Mark Talia. Like, you as a Blues supporter, you will know that at times it has been a little bit shaky throughout the season, of course, but what do you think is the main problem with Talia's defense at the moment? Is it just spatial awareness, or is it something else there?
Yeah. Yes, I think that's really it. Is spatial awareness, because what I will say from a Blues perspective, I don't think Talia is. We don't massively rely on him to kind of tackle as much as other players. So he kind of, I'm not saying it's just not part of his job to kind of get he's not meant to be like Severese in the way where he's in winning balls on the breakdown. That's not what his job is. That's not what his game has been about. But at the same time, the Blues have always been very compact in how they defend. They're never really wide. So whereas with the All Blacks, you've got to be very wide, because it's one of those where you're covering players with, of course, especially against England with that high ball, you've got to be covering a lot of the space. And that's something which Talia, I do agree with. He can be let down in that area. So yeah, I understand the reason why May look to take him out of this game and then put Caleb Clark there. So yeah, I'm in agreement with them. Yeah.
I mean, he was playing halfback at one point, wasn't he? He was going with as many pick and goes as he could throughout that first half.
He does it often. That's the thing. With the Blues, he just takes the ball and he just spins against people, and it works. He actually gains. That's where he gains a lot of his little meters in. So it's look, I can understand if you haven't seen the Blues and you'd be like, what is he doing? But at the same time, most of the time it actually works in his favor. But yeah, look, I mean, yeah, Caleb Clark, I like that. Who you selected for the 14-15 then?
Well, number 14, I have gone with Amoni Narawa for his first minutes of 2024 for the All Blacks. He is another player throughout Super Rugby Pacific that had, I would say, ups and downs throughout that season, but overall he was very solid out on that right wing, so I would definitely give him some minutes up against the Fijians. Number 15, this is where I believe they will go with Beauden Barrett. Now, that is a big call because there is also the chance that they go with Stephen Perofeta, give him more minutes under his belt for that 15 jersey. But I know for a fact that if they don't put Beauden Barrett in the starting side, there'll be a lot of New Zealanders annoyed because some people will say after that last week's performance, he should be in the starting lineup no matter what. Yeah. But we've also got to remember the week prior, we hardly saw that man when he came off the bench for the last 29 minutes. And it's also one of those games. This one is about trying to find what works heading into the Rugby Championship. You know that Beauden Barrett, if he is on his best out there on the field, he is going to be world class. But someone like a Stephen Perofeta, maybe he does need more minutes to get that confidence behind him. So perhaps up against the Fijians, that's the perfect game to do it. But yeah, I put him in because I know that the coaches will probably also know that if they don't put him in, people will be very upset. But Tim, have you fallen into peer pressure or have you got Stephen Perofeta at number 15?
So I've also gone with Caleb Clark, number 11 jersey. I also agree with you on that standpoint, kind of what we discussed earlier on. 14, I've also come up with Moni Nawa in that position for the same reasons where he just needs minutes in that. And I just think, yes, we've seen Seven Reece play. He's been very good for the All Blacks, I say, throughout the 2 games against England. Just more, I want to see just a different player in there. And I think Moni Nawa had a brilliant season for the Chiefs. So I think he deserves to get an opportunity here, especially in the USA against Fiji. So I want to see him there, the number 14 jersey. But the 15, however, I have also gone with Beauden Barrett. I have also gone with Beauden Barrett. I have gone with Beauden Barrett. But by the way, there's another reason why I've chosen him ahead of Perofeta, and this is more of a long-term view of it. Is I do also agree that if they wanted to set him here, it's just better because you want to get more game time for Perofeta, particularly in this game because it's probably the best game to do it in. But also, and this is not a negative. I'm being very clear before I say this. This is not a negative, but I also think because the All Blacks' first 2 games in the Rugby Championship is against Argentina, both at home, I would still be okay with Perofeta starting both those games. So it's one of those where that's kind of the way I'm thinking about it. Like where I don't mind if Beauden Barrett starts here, and also just more about how good he played within that last game. I feel like he deserves it. So it's one of those like where I want to see him at least play in the number 15 jersey, get a start. I think Razor's going to do this just because he wants a better understanding of both Beauden Barrett and Stephen Perofeta within that 15 jersey. And I think it's just going to give him a lot more confidence going into the Rugby Championship to select both players when he wants to. So yeah, that's the reason there. But yeah, it's crazy. We only have 2 changes I think so far within this 15. I mean, hopefully we'll have some changes from the bench.
I can guarantee you we will because I've made a few big calls for the bench in this one. But I like the way you're looking at it, the long-term booking of the All Blacks a little bit. Yeah. You could say in terms of what is coming next for them. Of course, we've got around 4 weeks till the Rugby Championship does start up. So there's plenty of time for them to work out their combos in that gap in between Bunnings NPC kicking off here in New Zealand very soon. So we're also going to get to see some other guys who just missed out on the squad.
There could be other players.
Possibly move their way in as well. But now we look through at the reserves for yourself, Tim. Number 16, 17, 18. Who have you got in these spots?
So yeah, this is where I've definitely made some bold calls here. Well, particularly the first one here, because I haven't selected Cody Taylor. I've gone with George Bell to come off the bench here, and I think it's one which I think is deserved. I think just similar towards the other players who haven't been able to get kind of as many minutes in the England Test kind of series. I think George Bell, this is a perfect opportunity for him to kind of get some minutes on the board off the bench, and yeah, I like the idea of him. So I want to see him involved in this game, and I think it's best place for him. In terms of the props, however, this is actually where I've gone with Ofton Fossey to come off the bench. And again, this is where we've seen him kind of within the England series, so he's not going to have any kind of a problem adjusting towards the amount of minutes he's had. And then, yeah, finally, I've gone with Fletcher Newell at the number 18. So, again, I could have gone with Tyrell Lomax. I was considering to put him in, but I just can't remember the last time Tyrell Lomax came off the bench. So I was like, I think it just makes more sense to put Fletcher Newell in that position because, again, he's done very well from a scrummaging standpoint. So, yeah, that's my placement hooker and props there.
Well, for the Hurricanes, of course, when he was returning from injury, Vasilio Tosi starting lineup, Lomax off the bench, those boys maybe switching a little bit. I would be surprised, but at the same time, maybe it's a nice surprise. Who knows? I feel like Fletcher Newell He would definitely suit that number 18 jersey for this game, which is why I have gone with him. That was just me building into the fact that I have selected him as my number 18. Number 16, I have gone with George Bell once again, just like yourself. I want to give him a debut here up against the Fijians. And then number 17. If you remember rightly, I had Ofa Tuangafasi in my starting lineup. The reasoning behind it is because I believe that for George Bell's debut, they will give him a couple familiar faces, and that is why I've got Tamaiti Williams as the number 17. So an All Crusaders front row replacing the 3 in the starting lineup.
Okay. I like it.
That was the only reason that I had Ofa in the starting lineup. Well, one of the few reasons, I should say. But I just felt like George Bell,
he's awesome.
For his first game, he's a Blues boy, isn't he?
He's awesome.
Do you prefer Ofa with the scrum cap or without it?
Oh, with the scrum cap, of course. Probably the most defining moment of his career for the Blues was when he ran with the scrum cap to stop that kind of kick from the Brumbies. Like, that was awesome. Like, who knew Ofa had that pace, you know? That was like, hey, he should be a winger for God's sake. But no, we're going besides the point here. That's I like the idea.
And I feel like it's one of those ones as well. This game, as well as needing to build up form for the Rugby Championship, this is about seeing the depth that your squad has. And something that we're going to see in that number 19 jersey, of course, is a new person. Because no Patrick Tuipulotu. Unless, of course, they were to transition Samapeni Finau to 19 as the replacement lock. But that's not what I've done. I have gone with Sam Derry, a Blues boy himself. He is going to be there as my number 19. And then number 20, I've gone with Ardie Savia. Once again, a little bit similar to yourself in terms of when's the last time Lomax came off a bench. When's the last time Savia isn't in a starting side when he is a part of the team?
That's the bold call. That's the bold call I think you've made of the bunch so far.
Yeah, and I'm not completely sold on it, to be honest, but I just feel like, I don't know, with Savia, I don't think he gets much of the decision to be made, but do you think he'd be like, look, give Satiti the start here and have me come off the bench? He's been playing in New Zealand the whole... You think he's just going to...
But also, like you another part of my thinking around Sevilla starting is that we haven't seen a lot of him within New Zealand. We've also seen him within Japan. So it's also one of those like where I want to see him more minutes from an international standpoint to just get him starting because you want him to become the player like we saw within the Rugby World Cup. So yeah, I think he just needs to get a start. But hey, if he comes off the bench, he can cover all 3 positions because the very start of his career he was a 6, so he can cover all 3. So I don't mind the idea.
So you have got 2 replacement forwards remaining, I assume. No 6-2 split for this contest?
No, I thought about it, but no, Reza, I don't know, it was that bold yet to try it. Maybe against the Springboks, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I'm going with a 5-3 split. But for this one, I have also gone with Sam Derry, because like yourself, it's probably the only other option you can kind of select here. We have Tuipulotu not being selected and Derry ahead of him. So I've gone with Sam Derry off the bench. So yeah, looking forward to see how he does, because he deserves it. He's had a great season for the Blues, and again, he's been more seen as like a call-up kind of injury cover in that way. But good to see him kind of it would be nice to see him get his kind of some minutes in this game. So I've got him there. And then this is where I've gone with Luke Jacobson to come off the bench, because I think this is where it's more expected for him to come off the bench because he can cover all 3 positions. I was actually considering Jones Papali, because again, he can cover the 6 and 7, and you have 2 players like Savia and Satiti who can cover the 8, so you can make at least a switch from one of those 2 players. But I thought it made more sense from a Razor standpoint to select Jacobson rather than Papali, which is what I would have gone with. So yeah, I've gone with Jacobson in that position.
Righty, so that just leaves us our 3 backs. 21, 22, 23. It's been pretty hard to predict what order they have been going with these players.
Yes. Yeah.
Mainly that 22, 23. Of course, Beauden Barrett actually both games has played 23 rather than the usual 22 that we would see of him. But of course, he has been coming on as a replacement fullback. For yourself, who are your last 3 in your All Blacks team?
So I've made the bold call here. And again, this is where we have to remember that Tutu Perinar is not available for selection because, of course, he has an injury. But we haven't actually have a time on that, if I'm not mistaken. But still, he's not in the consideration for this game. So it's really between Finley Christie and Noah Holtman, because he's the player that's been called up in place of TJ. And in this scenario, I have actually gone with Noah Holtman. I've actually gone with him to get some minutes off the bench here, because I'd like to see it, because it's one of those where I can't think of another game where he'll get this opportunity unless he does so well in this game, they choose him to go into the Rugby Championship. So that's kind of the thinking behind this. It's one of those like where prove yourself in this game, we'll see if there's enough there to keep you on for the Rugby Championship. So that's my idea behind this, because I think Finlay Christie is a sure thing to get into the Rugby Championship squad, and then the same with Pontus Latimer. It's more about Tito Perenar in terms of his injury, like how long will it be, and if there's an opportunity for No Hopeman to take it, I want to see it. I want to see him kind of take that. So that's the reason why I've set him off the bench. And with that, this is where, like I said, a bit of tricky where you're putting these two players in, but I've gone with Stephen Perifetta as the 22, because again, he can cover the 10 and 15, so that's where I've placed him. And then the final position, this is actually where I've gone with Reiko Lawani to come off as the final player to cover that, center, of course, as well as the wingers. So I think there's a lot of versatility. I've gone off kind of the bench there. So we'll see if it pays off. Again, I think Razor, most likely would think of maybe Geordie Barrett maybe in this case, but I think Reiko would be a smart idea, but we'll have to wait and see.
And that word versatility, it is one that we talked about a lot throughout the early stages of this season. For myself at number 21, as much as I would love to see Noah Hotham get that opportunity, I feel like they still need some form of experience between their halfbacks, because we've got to remember, if they went with Hotham, they have got one cap between their starting and second halfback in this contest. So it would be risky, but it would also be very intriguing, like you said, to see how Noah Hotham would go at international level. I have gone with Finlay Christie, though, as my number 21 to be able to close out this game. If it is a close contest, then...
I have a question for you, actually, because I just thought of this.
I'm excited. I've got a question for you, too, about Christie.
Awesome. Okay, so first one, because we know that Fiji have two incredible kind of scrum halves, because they got Frank Lamani and Kuravali there. Do you think that combination will be better than Ratama and No Hopeman? If that was like, if you compare those two.
I think if you're basing it off form, Lamani hasn't quite been what he has been prior. Kuravali, I think, is still in sensational form at the moment. But I don't know. Ratama is the X factor at the moment out of those four, I believe. Yeah. In terms of if he has a great game and he links up well with Damian McKenzie, they could be firing very nicely. The All Blacks, but I certainly wouldn't underestimate what Kuravali can do for this Fijian side, as well as Lamani. But yeah, to answer your question, I would probably say, like, in this type of game, experience is a wonderful thing. But, that X factor does go to Ratama after the way that he played in the Super Rugby season. My question to you, Tim, is do you think Mark Talia plays halfback so much because Finlay Christie is way too slow getting to the rucks?
No, not at all. He's just too ambitious. He scores tries for days. He scores tries for fun, really. And that's what
he concedes them for fun too, doesn't he?
He concedes one, but hey, he scores two though, so he makes up for it. At least a 2-on-1 conversion. But it's one of those where, look, Finlay Christie's awesome. He's an awesome player. I know he's your favorite player. I mean, just let everyone know, guys. It is literally the Kiwi lad's favorite player, and he's gonna have a mantle of him when he retires. So just keep that in mind, by the way, guys. But back to the serious question of things. Yes, I think Mark Talia is awesome.
I don't think that was the question, but we will go with it. So, number 22, I've also gone with Stephen Perifetta as my replacement fly half or fullback. Of course, we've got to remember for the Blues throughout the season, he has also had some minutes at 10, although someone who might have been quite handy for that role, Harry Plummer, could have possibly been that guy.
Would have minded.
Would have really shone in this type of game. Number 23, this is where I have gone with Billy Proctor. I want to see him get some minutes in this contest, even if it's, I feel like Proctor, even though he's played so much at 13, he seems like the type of player that could shift out to the wing without too much trouble at all.
I agree. I can see that.
I feel like he's kind of my other positional cover of centre and wing, and then Perifetta is the 10 and 15 cover for this contest. But those are our starting lineups and reserves that we do believe Scott Robertson will be going with, even though at times we may have worded it a bit weird. This is what we think Razor is going to be going with. Our XVs would be different, and that is half the fun. Of course, everyone in the comments, I assume, will have slight changes, so do let us know your starting lineups and reserves that either you think Razor will go with or that you would select if you were in charge of the All Blacks. A big thank you once again to Rugbyitch for coming on the channel. His link will be in the comments as well as the description down below. Be sure to check him out. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all for the next one.